Hey everyone, Pyro here. Today we're going to talk about how to spread all of your pain to the other team as you spread burn to everyone, making everyone sad as you become best friends forever. Pyro is a bit of an odd class, as he can be played in many different ways. The main strengths of Pyro are the lack of needing really good aim compared to other classes, close range crowd control and the chaos he causes, the ability to inflict afterburn, being able to check for spies, and especially the ability to air blast. The biggest weakness of Pyro is distance. Her primary weapon, the Flamethrower, has a relatively short range. Sure, his secondaries may have longer reach, but they all have their own weaknesses and quirks. The Pyro is also susceptible to large amounts of hit scan damage, as classes like Heavy can out-damage the Pyro in his effective range, shotguns can burst you down, and the auto-aim of sentry guns, oftentimes they just create a no Pyro zone.
Well, actually, you can air blast sentry rockets.
Yes, we know, okay? However, Pyro is very good against spies, with their Flamethrower making spy checking easy, and their air blast is uniquely able to counter the main weapons of some of the game's strongest classes. This puts Pyro in a funny position with his role. It's common knowledge that the categories in the class menu are not accurate at all, and I thought this episode of How to Man would be the best to elaborate on this. In reality, the class roles are split up into Power, the main fighting force of the team, Pick, the class is good at picking off key targets on the enemy team, and Support, who support their team in one way or another. The classes that fit into these roles can be represented by a Venn diagram, with Pyro sitting right here. Pyro is a mix between Power and Support, having his great utility in protecting teammates, but he can also attack enemies and get kills should she choose to. You can play with a balance of these two aspects, switching between one and the other on the fly, or lean your playstyle into one more than the other. And I guess that fits the theme of Pyro. Nobody really knows what's going on with them, let alone the Pyro. The abomination made out of duct tape, a propane tank, pipe, and a gas pump is your primary weapon. Upon holding the fire button, it'll fire roughly 30 or so flame particles a second in a narrow cone. These flames can pierce through any number of enemies and engineer buildings. Of course, as mentioned before, their range is quite limited, looking like this. The enemy will take continuous damage when hit by a stream of flames, though they will take less from older particles. The more flame particles that hit an individual, the more damage will ramp up for them, roughly doubling after about 1.5 seconds. However, this will reset should any particles fail to make contact with said player, and buildings are unaffected by this ramp up. The flames also inflict afterburn. This slowly deals continuous damage and lasts up to 10 seconds depending on how long the victim was being flamed for. 10 seconds! Spray and walk away! This can be used to finish off enemies, combo with other weapons we'll mention later, or to track disguised or cloaked spies, though enemy Pyros and engineer buildings are immune to this effect.
It's almost like Pyro sucks at attacking sentries.
But on Pyro's alt fire, we have the air blast. This can be used to push away enemies, extinguish teammates with afterburn which heals the Pyro as they spread their love, and most importantly, can deflect projectile attacks. So let's elaborate on this. A projectile is a ranged attack that takes time to travel to the target. This includes stuff like rockets, pipes, stickies, etc. Bullets like the shotgun, pistol, and sniper rifle travel instantly when fired and cannot be air blasted. Melee weapons are basically bullets with extremely short range and therefore cannot be air blasted either. When a projectile is air blasted, the following effects occur. The projectile swaps team, behaving as if you were the one who fired it, the projectile will be redirected to wherever you are aiming, and the projectile will become a mini crit if it wasn't already. In the case of explosives, this means you won't be able to harm your teammates anymore, but it can harm you. Mini crits deal a bonus 35% damage and are unaffected by damage fall-off, which can lead to some cheeky kills. Though that won't apply if the shot was already a full-on crit, but hey, I don't think you're going to complain about killing 3 enemies with an air-blasted critical rocket. Oh man, if I shoot this rocket and it gets air-blasted, it'll kill my mate. Then he'll become a ghost and he'll be like, want a chip? Nah bro, you know I can't touch any of your ghost chips. The only projectile that behaves differently with air blast are sticky bombs. They won't swap team or owner, instead they'll just get displaced. The demo who fired them will still remain in full control over when they are detonated, and I don't know how the Pyro is going to somehow get a detonator for them himself. This leaves the Flamethrower unable to remove sticky bombs. While you might be able to get them out of the way in some cases, or push them back before they land, sometimes they just tauntingly remain there, or worse, you accidentally send them into your teammates. Of course, pushing players around is good as well. Not only can it be used to displace players and disrupt pushes, but it's one of the few ways you can disrupt an uber charge. You may be impervious to physical harm, but are you impervious to compressed air? So given how Pyro's Flamethrower works, it's time to burn some enemies. Now, despite how flashy and at times disorienting the effects of the Flamethrower are, its damage per second is deceptively low. If you run up to a revved up heavy and start attacking with the Flamethrower, they easily have enough time to turn towards you and gun you down. Even other classes with lower health possess the firepower to burst you down at close range before you can kill them. The Flamethrower is also a sustained damage weapon and not burst like most classes have. This means line of sight needs to be maintained to continue dealing damage, which allows enemies to corner peek you. With all this said, my point is that the strategy of W plus M1 isn't always effective, especially when done out in the open. You want to try and get as close to the enemy as possible, so you can hopefully catch them in Flamethrower range before they notice you. Use flanks to sneak behind, wait in hiding spots to ambush your enemies, or simply take advantage of tight spaces so that the enemy lacks room to move around in. It should be noted that because the flames can go through enemies and buildings, it makes Pyro great at dealing with clumped up groups of players in tight spaces. Inversely, open areas are where Pyro is most vulnerable, not only because more people will be out of Flamethrower range, but because it's easier to stay out of it. This is most easily observed when attempting to WM1 any competent scout. They typically know the range of the Flamethrower well enough to just barely stay out of it while damaging you. However, should the Pyro press 2 on the keyboard, and voila! A not Flamethrower! The shotgun, while not as generally lethal as the Flamethrower, can also cover a lot of its weaknesses.
Well, actually, the flare guns are much more popular.
Yeah, I know, but this is the one that new players start with.
Anyway, so the shotgun is also the default secondary of heavy and soldier. Instead of being sustained damage, it is burst. And while it's known to do less damage at range because shotgun, it lacks the range limit of the Flamethrower. This can be used as extra damage, to destroy stickies, a deterrent, or to catch those cheeky players outside your flame range, especially when finishing them off. But sometimes, you don't need to do that, because Afterburn might do it anyway. Oftentimes, the threat of dying from Afterburn is enough to make the enemy retreat, but be wary of nearby health packs, or water, as it can be used to extinguish the flames. However, burning players can open up new murder opportunities with the flare gun. This thing replaces your shotgun and shoots out a flare projectile that can also set the enemy on fire. It doesn't do a lot of damage on hit, but it does deal critical damage to players that are already burning. And I think you can see where this is going. Yeah, while we can get it from a random drop, you are guaranteed to get it if you get at least 10 Pyro achievements. There are alternate versions of the flare gun as well, but I'll save those for later in the video. Just know that Pyro secondaries can be pretty damn useful. Just note that unlike the shotgun, flares can be air blasted by enemy Pyros. Oh right, air blast. While as Pyro you often want to get right in the enemy's face, or even multiple enemies at once in a cramped space, sometimes it gets a bit much, and you can push them away to make space. Does it count as a rhyme when I say the same word multiple times? Oh wait. This can be used to disorient them, move them into a worse position, or set up your retreat because you realized you ran into a dumb situation. As well as being a get off me move, it can also be used to push enemies into a worse position, or straight into a death pit. Which, fun fact, is the only way to kill an Ubered medic.
Well, actually, the medic could get telefragged.
When has that ever happened to you? Even in maps without death pits, the air blast can prove to be incredibly disruptive to an Uber charge, as you can try and push the patient away from the medic to end the Uber early, or simply push the pair away from where they're trying to go, halting their advance. And then of course, the coolest use of air blast, deflecting projectiles. This is most notable when fighting against soldiers in demos, as their main weapons are projectiles. At medium and especially long range, denying their attacks is pretty easy if you have the timing down. But at close range, it often becomes too fast for a human to react to. So it goes from reaction to prediction. Basically, you want to try and click at basically the same time as the enemy does to deflect their attack. This being said, some players will actually use their brains, shocker, and won't just instantly shoot at you if they know you can air blast. This is where the mind game begins of, when will the soldier shoot at you? Good soldiers will intentionally delay their shots to screw with your air blast timing, or if they have one equipped, pull out their shotgun. Note that you can do the same to deny them from playing this mind game, or you can begin to WM1 them to pressure them into shooting you sooner than later. Of course, watch the ammo because you can only air blast up to 10 times before needing more ammo, especially when trying to protect your team. Air Blast is the main way Pyro provides support to her team, as he can push away attackers, projectiles, stuff Ubers, and extinguish teammates. Extinguishing teammates is simple and rewards you with some extra health for your kindness. As mentioned before, you can also deny a lot of ranged projectile spam with Air Blast. However, you need to watch the ammo while doing so. This is where sticking near sources of ammo or friendly dispensers comes into play. It's a positive loop, you protecting the engineer and medic so they can supply you with the health and ammo you need to continue protecting them. This is where, despite what the game categorizes them as, the Pyro becomes very good defensively. This also leads to the other point of playing Pyro defensively, spy checking. Afterburn leaves a visible effect on the player inflicted by it, and this effect can be seen on cloaked and disguised spies. If you suspect a teammate is a spy, or you think a spy is hiding somewhere, a single puff of flame is enough to get them found. Pyro is, as you may have guessed, really good at killing spies. Often spies will be a free kill. Some of the time. Since engineers are often targeted by spies due to their ability to actually get close to the sentry without being shot by it, Pyro and engineer make a good combo. This also cycles back to the air blast since you can protect a nest from not only spies, but projectile spam as well. And remember that air blast is one of the best ways you can counteract an enemy Uber charge. If a medic decides to Uber you to counter an enemy Uber, your job is to right click on the enemy as much as possible. Should there be no enemy Uber, however, your best bet is to go straight on the offensive and WM1 all the way. Remember that again, you are most lethal in small areas and against clumped up groups. This makes you even more terrifying when you pair that with complete damage immunity. But it's worth noting that the stock flamethrower you start out with is the best for air blast spam, as it is the only flamethrower with the lowest air blast ammo consumption. Alongside the stock flamethrower, Pyro possesses 4 other unlockable variants. First up, the Backburner. It has more than double the air blast cost, going from 20 ammo to 50, but in return it deals guaranteed critical hits from behind. Now, if you've ever played Spy, you'll know that the game's definition of behind someone can be a bit finicky. So sometimes it doesn't go off when it seems like it should, and sometimes it goes off for seemingly no reason. But generally, if you sneak up behind people and ambush them with this thing, you'll probably get those crits, and a very fast kill. It's also worth noting that it's not super easy to notice when an enemy Pyro is using this thing. As a result, you may get people turning to run away from you when you attack them with this thing, only to get obliterated because they decided to look away from your awesome face. The degreaser deploys and holsters faster, but deals a third of the afterburn damage, and costs 25 ammo to air blast instead of 20. This is the flamethrower you use if you like to switch to your secondary or melee a lot. We'll talk more about those later, but the point is if you want to combo weapons together, this is the primary for you. You can switch off of it quickly to shotgun someone or hit them with the flare as they try to retreat, or the opposite as you quickly pull it back out again to deflect a projectile. Though again, you should really only use this if you plan to swap back and forth between weapons. If you just equip it and forget about your other items, it's basically just a worse flamethrower. Note that afterburn damage is based on the last burn damage dealt, so it will increase after being hit by a flare and vice versa. Then we have the Phlogistonator. As you deal fire damage, it builds up your oomph meter. After roughly 300 damage, it will fill up, at which point you can activate it for a brief second of invincibility while taunting, then roughly 8 seconds of full-on critical hits, which at close range can absolutely devastate groups. How does this flamethrower give your ability to air blast? Well, that's the fun part. It can't. Yeah, as tempting as the power of this thing is, it puts you at a major disadvantage against soldiers and demos, who can now just mindlessly shoot at you. Doesn't help that it's quite noticeable when you are using it. It is tempting to charge in and try and build your oomph meter, but it can just as easily get you killed.
And it makes you look like a big idiot.
I don't even understand. This ain't a catastrophe. It's a warning.
What the heck are they on about?
I don't know either. But basically, play it safe while building your oomph, and try to get as close as you can without being noticed before activating it. Run into a group and show them what it's like to play Outer Wilds for 22 minutes. Bonus point on being evil if you combine this with an Uber charge. Next we have the Dragon's Fury. Now this one has entirely separate firing mechanics. Instead of a stream of flames, it fires a fireball. This means for once in your life, you have to actually aim to deal damage as Pyro. Terrifying. The flame balls travel a lot further than the other flamethrowers, giving you further reach. It penetrates much like other flamethrowers and does the same damage as the flare gun on hit, while also inflicting afterburn. Hitting an enemy that is already on fire deals triple damage, though, unlike the flare gun, this isn't counted as a critical hit, meaning it can stack with them. This bonus only counts if the center of the fireball makes contact with the enemy, so again, you have to actually aim. Getting hits will also temporarily increase the fire rate of the weapon, which sounds cool, but it does make it really awkward trying to keep up with the inconsistent fire rate. I would recommend practicing this thing against bots. Its main upside in practice is that it has a further reach and higher damage. However, you need to aim to achieve that higher damage, and it also has a higher repressurization time after air blasting, meaning you can't really spam it. Its ammo also works differently, but in terms of air blast cost, you can use it as many times as you can on the degreaser before running dry. Oh, and the projectile itself can be air blasted by enemy pyros. Make of that what you will. Also a bonus one, the Rainblower, which functions the same as stock, but upon equipping it, it takes you to Pyroland. It also appears as a stock flamethrower to anyone not also in Pyroland. As for secondary weapons, we already touched upon the shotgun. There are also two alternate shotguns the Pyro can equip, both of which are also shared with Soldier. The reserve shooter is good at dealing bonus damage to targets launched by explosions, and the panic attack is better at dealing close range burst damage. And then we have the flare guns. I also talked about the regular flare gun earlier, but there are also 3 other types that branch off of it. It's worth noting that all the flare guns pair well with the degreaser due to how quickly it lets you switch, but can work with any flamethrower. There's even more advanced techniques, such as how to flare punch in 2018. Here we have the detonator. It deals mini crits instead of full crits to burning enemies, as well as dealing less damage to enemies and more to yourself. However, it has the unique ability to be remotely detonated by right-clicking. This is basically a mini explosion that ignites enemies and can even destroy sticky bombs. Like actually destroy them, not the slight displacement your air blast does. However, if you hit a surface next to you, it will deal self-damage, and more importantly, self-knockback. This is nowhere near as intense as the likes of Soldier's rocket jumping, but it can allow you to take paths that you otherwise would have been unable to reach, catch up to enemies in a pinch, or as an escape, albeit at the cost of health. The Scorch Shot is the one that everyone hates to fight against,
For good reason.
It's pretty much the same as the detonator, but with the higher direct damage penalty, less self-knockback, and no remote detonation. But when hitting an enemy, the flare will bounce off of them and explode, or just explode instantly when hitting a wall. This explosion deals damage and afterburn, with direct hits dealing knockback, both the knockback and damage being higher against already burning players. Both the direct hit and explosion can deal damage and burn, allowing it to hit the same enemy twice. This one is very spammable and easy to ignite people with, and is thus very, very annoying. Also, like the detonator, it can destroy stickies and can be used to jump, albeit not as far. Finally, the Man Melter, which technically is a laser gun, but it pretty much just fires flares that travel faster. Its alt fire can extinguish teammates, which earns you guaranteed critical hits, but it can't random crit. That and the fact it does nothing special to burning enemies, but it also doesn't require ammo whatsoever. Then the final 2 pyro secondaries are their own special cases. The Gas Passer sucks. It fills up over time, and as you deal damage, when thrown it creates a gas cloud that douses enemies that walk through, to which any amount of damage will instantly ignite them, even if they're also a pyro. In theory, it's good at locking down an area, but it just isn't threatening enough to be a decent weapon. Except when playing man versus machine, but these tutorials aren't about that mode. Finally, the Thermal Thruster. It's a jetpack. You thought you could fly using the detonator? Ha! Take to the skies with this beaut! I'll admit it's not the most practical item, but I mean, come on. It's a jetpack, and it's fun to use. It does take quite a bit to deploy and holster, so keep that in mind when dive bombing enemies, but it also has the effect the man-treads have, where it deals triple the full damage to any enemy you directly land on. It's dumb, it's goofy, and taunting with it does this. There are definitely strategies that the jetpack enables, such as dive bombing people with the back burner or Goomba stomping people, But speaking objectively, there are more practical options. And then we have Pyro's melee, the Fire Axe, which deals 65 damage with an 0.8 second attack interval just like other stock melees. It's also overshadowed by the third degree, which hits all players connected by minigun beam, and that's it. It has no downsides. It's literally the only unlockable weapon in the game to have no drawbacks. You may think this would be overpowered, but its use case is so incredibly situational that almost nobody uses it anyway. And then how many Pyro melees are there left? Oh god, Pyro has 9 functionally distinct melee weapons. Quick fire round! Power Jack is just the best Pyro melee. It gives you a speed boost when you hold it out, but also damage vulnerability at the same time. Simply hold it out to reach the front lines faster, or in the rare case, catch up to enemies. I mean, you can flick back and forth with good timing to avoid damage, but that also depends on if you have the coordination to do so. The Extinguisher mini crits burning players and extinguishes them, doing more damage based on how much longer they were going to burn for. Has a damage penalty, slower switch from speed, and can't random crit. Works well as a finisher, and pairs well with the Degreaser. The Back Scratcher deals extra damage and causes you to gain more health from health packs, but decreases the healing rate from medics and dispensers. Works best on more independent pyros. The Home Wrecker is bad and you should never use it. Okay, fine. It deals bonus damage to buildings and can also remove spy sappers from friendly engineer buildings. Works best when playing defensively. Can I have it back now? Thank you. The Neon Annihilator can also remove sappers, but does it in 2 hits instead of 1. But more significantly, it deals bonus damage to wet players. This includes those who are underwater, were recently underwater, hit by Girardi, Mad Milk, or even the Gas Passer. On maps with lots of water, this enables the funny meme strat of Pyroshark. The Hot Hand gives you a speed boost on hit, but has a damage penalty. But you don't use this thing for practicality, you just use it because it's funny to slap people. The Sharpened Volcano Fragment has a damage penalty, but ignites enemies on hit, allowing you to set people on fire at close range on Pyro of all classes. Okay, yeah, that was it. Pyro has a lot of options to go for, not all of which are created equal. Feel free to play around with them and create loadouts that fit your needs and strategies. But with a more well-rounded understanding of Pyro's kit, let's talk about how to actually deal with each class. Scout is the fastest class in the game. Good scouts know the range of the Flamethrower and will stay just outside of it while dealing damage to you like the annoying flying pest they are. This is where sneaking up on them, catching them in tight spaces where they lack the room to move around, or using your secondaries comes into play. The tighter the space, the more advantage you have. Should you catch them in Flamethrower range but they manage to make distance, your secondary weapons, especially the stock flare gun, can be a good way to finish them off as they try to run away from their doom. Not too much else to say here that I haven't already said. Good soldiers will recognize when you know how to air blast and won't shoot mindlessly. If they have a shotgun, they may pull it out to counter air blast, but should they delay their shots, you can WM1 to pressure them to act fast.
Yo, now we can share the ghost chips.
One thing that I haven't mentioned yet is that you can actually use reflected rockets to launch yourself, otherwise known as a reflect jump. These are difficult, but fun, and I'd be remiss if I didn't mention them. Against another Pyro, sometimes you can just make it a competition of who can hold their W and mouse 1 keys harder, but to get more efficient at fighting your mirror image, you best make use of your secondaries and air blast. Note that all flare guns are considerably weaker against enemy Pyros not only due to being able to be air blasted, but due to Pyro's immunity to afterburn with 2 exceptions, or if you flare punch them in 2018. Shotguns are generally quite good against enemy Pyros, especially if they like to WM1. You can also use corner peeking with the shotgun to more consistently outdamage the Flamethrower. Air Blast is also good as a get off me, which can allow you to make space to get away, or pull out a secondary. There is also the Dragon's Fury. It can have an advantage against WM1 Pyros due to its higher damage, but only if you can aim good. But be aware that it can be air blasted. Same goes when up against the Dragon's Fury. If you're going to WM1, it's best to catch the other Pyro off guard so they don't have enough time to react. However, note that using the Flog puts you at a massive disadvantage against enemy Pyros due to the lack of air blast. Demos are easily overwhelmed at close range, but be ready to deflect grenades. Pipes can be pretty quick, giving a pretty short window to deflect, but can do a lot of direct damage should you be able to. If pipes are being spammed from afar at your team, simply air blasting them into the ground will swap their team and prevent them from damaging anyone but you. If it's long-range sticky spam, you'll want to blast them before they land at their intended position. Be careful around stickies since they could be detonated at any moment, though they will disappear should the demo die. Then as for demonites, yeah. Heavy has too much health to reasonably WM one down, especially if they're revved. You'll want to make use of corner peeking with secondaries, air blast to put them out of position, or simply attack while they're at a disadvantage or very distracted. You can also attempt to circle around them at point blank to mess up their tracking, as they rely on said tracking far more than you. But it's normally best to consider that Heavy generally counts as Pyro, so a lot of the time, you should avoid confrontations with Heavy altogether, unless you really think, nah, I'd win. The Engineer by himself is basically a worse scout, but your main concern is the NPC he can summon, the Sentry Gun. The Flamethrower is particularly weak against these things unless they happen to be shooting at something else, and sometimes when they're at a lower level. A lot of the time, they are best avoided like the aimbot they are. That being said, the Engineer himself can be quite vulnerable if you catch him out, though don't underestimate the burst damage of the shotgun, unless they're using either of these. As for dealing with the sentry itself, an Uber may get you close, but try not to get sent airborne on the approach, as you'll likely get flung back. The one pyro weapon that is good against sentries is the Dragon's Fury, as the damage multiplier and faster firing speed actually do trigger on buildings, despite being unable to be set on fire. It can especially mulch mini-sentries. Speaking of mini-sentries, if the Engineer has the Gunslinger equipped, they'll have a bit more health and will likely play more aggressively. Be careful, as a common battle NG tactic is to divide enemy attention between themselves and their sentry, because multitasking is really hard for pyro players. Medic is the most important player on their team. Taking them out is always worth it, and like mentioned earlier, Air Blast is one of the few ways you can counter a stock Uber. Not much else to say that I haven't already said. Kill the Medic and Air Blast when he's in shiny German mode. Sniper is the long-range class. While you can harass them with flares, it's often best not to run at the sniper in an open space as for risk of getting shot in the skull, though fire makes them flinch and messes up their aim. It is best to be sneaky and avoid being seen by the sniper until you get close. Should you get close, they often become a very easy kill, especially if they aren't paying attention to their surroundings. Pyro counters spy, we've gone over this before, but Afterburn can easily reveal cloaked and disguised spies, as well as often making it obvious when a spy uses the dead ringer. But be aware that the spy isn't helpless, as they can use the fact you like to run straight at them to their advantage to trick you into exposing your back for just a fraction of a second, enough that they can land a trick stab. This depends on the skill of the spy in question, but be wary if you think a trick stab will be attempted, and try not to get too close. But if the spy is outside your flamethrower range, they have no way of being able to deal damage to you. Oh no. Spy has a gun! Pyro, an amalgamation of different roles and playstyles. An attacker, a defender, a protector, they can be any of these things, and they can switch on the fly. Build your loadout to lean into one of these styles, or take a loadout that allows you to be flexible. WM1 can be useful, but remember to track the enemy and make frequent use of your secondaries when needed. But the one thing all of these playstyles share in common? Close range carnage. Dude, are you okay?
I'll survive till next episode.
No!